Many of those who own property on the southern border will lose their property because of this. And once this happens, they say that they could go to court with you for years. It could take years. Then also, what is a safety net for federal workers? You're saying months and possibly a year for this shutdown. Do you have in mind a safety net for those who need their checks, those who need SSI, those who need Medicaid, what have you?
Well, the safety net is going to be having a strong border because we're going to be safe. I'm not talking about economically, but ultimately economically. I really believe that these people, many of the people that we're talking about, many of the people you're discussing, I really believe that they agree with what we're doing. And we can have this, April, we can have this fixed very quickly. This can happen by early next week. We're going to be working over the weekend. We can have a solution to this, but I wanted to keep it all at one point. And I think a lot of the people that you're referring to, April, are really wanting that to happen too. I really believe a lot of them want to see border security, and they're willing to give it up. When I had the people in yesterday, they represent most of the Border Patrol. The people that you had yesterday that were at the news conference, they represent most of Border Patrol. Every one of them said, don't even think about us. Get this fixed. That is doing the great thing for our country. As far as eminent domain, you're right, 100%. Eminent domain is very interesting. But without eminent domain, you wouldn't have any highways, you wouldn't have any schools, you wouldn't have any roadways. What we're doing with eminent domain is, in many cases, we'll make a deal up front, and we've already done that. The Secretary has done a lot of that. And if we can't make a deal, we take the land and we pay them through a court process, which goes actually fairly quickly. And we're generous, but we take the land. Otherwise, you could never build anything. If you didn't use eminent domain, you wouldn't have one highway in this country. You have to use eminent domain. It's actually something you don't want to use it, but if you're going to do a stretch, as an example, on pipelines and other things that go, you have to use eminent domain, otherwise you'd never be able to buy the land. If we had one person that wouldn't sell us out of hundreds, just one, it only takes one, then we wouldn't be able to build proper border security because we'd have that big opening that I was talking about. So what happens is some are paid up front, you make a deal up front, and we're willing to do that in all cases. And when they're unwilling to make a deal, which also happens, then you go to court. But in the meantime, we're able to build the border security. So I think it's a fair process. I think it's a process that's very necessary, but I think it's fair.
But that couldn't that hold up your wall?
No, it's not going to hold it up because under the military version of eminent domain and under actually Homeland Security, we can do it before we even start. Now, a lot of times we'll make a deal. And I would say a good percentage of the time we're making deals. We have already purchased a lot of it. You know, a lot of the money that we've been given has already been spent on purchasing the land, the right-of-way. It's essentially a right-of-way. So we are very, very far along on that. But eminent domain is something that has to be used, usually you would say for anything that's long, like a road, like a pipeline, or like a wall or a fence. Okay? Thank you. Good question. It's a good question.